Greetings, greetings. In this video, I'm going to speak to you about the phenomenon known as the New Age movement. So perhaps we can begin by asking the question, well, what is the New Age movement? So to begin with, as a little disclaimer, I am going to speak to a number of generalities. A generality means that this is a stereotype, this is an assumption, and it's not necessarily going to be true on the case-by-case individual level. So please bear this in mind. I am not speaking to any one of you person to person, face to face. I am not criticizing your own perspective or your own practice. What I hope is this video will provide some food for thought as we all are encountering and dealing with this phenomenon known as the quote-unquote New Age movement. So what I will term as the New Age movement is a common group of people in our contemporary times that are interested in spirituality that exists outside of our traditional cultures, specifically that of Christianity or, more traditional beliefs. So New Age movement simply refers to whatever is new, whatever is interesting. Now, how I'm going to term the New Age movement, as most of us will experience it by and large out there in the world, is a brand, is a fashion trend. And something that I have observed about the New Age movement is that there is a large group of souls that are interested in spirituality, that is interested in self-improvement or changing how we used to identify and relate to the world to be more empowered or to be, having an orientation that we find gives us meaning and significance in our life. So while religion has largely done this traditionally, in today's day and age, there's a lot of alternative options. However, what I see by and large is that the New Age movement is mostly a group of souls that are interested in this or that. It doesn't really mean much of anything in and of itself. Now, I'm going to address some common ideas and beliefs as something that I find is what can potentially be a problem. And this is what I think needs to be addressed and understood by those who are committed to a spiritual path, for those who really want to improve their lives, to improve their psyche and their relationship to the world in a healthy, service-oriented way. We need to understand that what is popular, what is going to sell, is usually oriented towards selling. And so the New Age movement is mostly a capitalist agenda. The New Age movement is so impacted, is so influenced by what packages well, what sells well, what looks pretty, is easily consumable, is easily understandable, and that's going to have a massive impact on the entire group of souls, the fashion trends, the branding that we see by and large out there in the world. This is the New Age movement. Okay, so what I want to say about popular books, popular spiritual paths, popular teachings. This is a generality. This is not always true. I find that what is popular is oriented towards what's going to sell. And when anything is packaged to be oriented towards what's going to sell, I call this selling out. Hey, Jenny. Good to see you all, by the way. I'm doing this live. So when we sell out to stupid. When we sell out, we sacrifice to appease the lowest common denominator of any group. And this, by and large, is what the New Age movement is. It is what is easily understandable, easily packaged, then made popular, and this is where we get group dynamics that have a hive mind or a herd state or a cult-like influence. And for those of you who are familiar with my work, this is what I'm constantly addressing, as I feel passionate about making aware, informing the public about the reality of these spiritual groups and cult-like dynamics where they can become harmful, where they can become interferences in our spiritual path. So there's all sorts of these ideas and beliefs that are easily consumable, easily sellable, and then make themselves into popular groups, and then they turn into cult-like dynamics where there can be expectations, obligations to fit that mold, to have that type of identity. And then we get these very superficial types of moral ways of evaluating people, like, oh, if you look and appear and dress this way and eat these foods and have this tone of voice, you're higher vibe, and if you don't fit that particular mold or talk that way or look this way, you must be lower vibe, and this becomes oppressive. The New Age movement can be incredibly oppressive in enforcing these hive mind or herd-like states out of the need to sell and consume packaged material for profit. So, I don't know, maybe you've heard Terence McKenna say that you don't need a guru. So my guru, Terence McKenna, says you don't need a guru. Or perhaps you read in a book that you don't need to read books. Well, that's going to be some of these very easily consumable, wonderful. We don't have to think anymore. My guru says you don't need a guru. I was talking to a friend a few weeks ago about my passion for critical thinking. And this is what I'm encouraging all the time in these videos, is we need to be critical thinkers, which means we know how to think for ourselves. We're not outsourcing our thinking for somebody else to do that thinking for us. There's never been an easier way to sell our soul and be imprisoned than to give up on our own critical thinking, which, by the way, requires skepticism, which requires discernment. And that means we should have doubts. So guess what I also see all out there in the cult-like world of the New Age movement is that criticism, doubt, scrutiny, critical thinking are considered negative things. My friends, if anybody ever sells you any of that garbage, what they're trying to do is steal your soul. So that way you don't need to think. And that way you're easily led into a herd-like state, so you can send all your money to Guru, Mrs. or Mr. Any teacher that says you need to leave all the teachings that you've ever learned up until me and you're going to start with a clean slate. This is a way to sell your soul. This is a way to become imprisoned in a cult-like dynamic. So I was talking about my passion for critical thinking. And my friend said, well, I read in a book that critical thinking is a burden. And that just amazed me. That amazed me that there could be such a lack of forethought that I read in a book that reading books is a bad idea. It's like we need to think for ourselves. We need to have discernment. And there's so much in this cult-like, capitalistic-oriented New Age movement that will absolutely sell you the opposite in order to keep you mindless and possessed. Okay? So we need to be aware of this. Even when I'm out there in the communities, and when I'm out there in the permaculture communities, and when I'm out there in the, places where there's so much nature-oriented people, do we recognize diversity in nature? Diversity is a part of nature. There is no one spiritual path. There is no one health standard. There is no one healthy diet, healthy appearance, healthy way of communicating. Whenever these ideas get sold, we immediately see cult-like dynamics. And I don't even think the word cult needs to be negative. We just need to understand when a group is attempting to have a single-minded orientation, and that being honest and understood and out in the open, rather than we're not a cult, but we actually are. And there's so much of this out there. It really distresses me. So we need to embrace diversity. We don't all sound the same. We don't all dress the same. We do not all have the same perspectives. And as soon as we start enforcing one of all of the above, we start to oppress our fellow brothers and sisters. And it's just absolutely shocked me how there's so many people that dress and act and behave like we're all oriented towards nature, and what it actually is an orientation towards a particular brand. And maybe that brand is we only get food from the farm and we only get clothes from nature, and then it ends up being a capitalist agenda. So we need to distinguish what is actual connection to the earth versus what is being sold as a connection to the earth. We need to evaluate, which means judgment, which means discernment. That means thinking with a critical mind. We need to evaluate what is an authentic spiritual practice versus what is being sold as a spiritual practice. Now, I'm going to share an idea here that is going to be quite controversial, because it's controversial in nature to understand that not all human beings are on an equal playing field. And this idea that we're all one and we all are the same and we all have the same amount of value and we all have the same amount of love and we all have the same amount of compassion is naive. In the very, very core of our being, we are all consciousness. We're all on an equal playing field there. But in this world where there's individuals, individual souls, and individual bodies, we're in very, very different places. And we're not all learning the same things at the same time. So we cannot evaluate a spiritual path in a one-size-fits-all. Not ever. Not ever when it comes to human beings. In the New Age spiritual movement, there's going to be so many different levels of different souls on different stages of different spiritual progressions for different reasons. And I do not think that spiritual progress is a linear A, B, C, D, easy to see or identify process. No, it's not that simple. We can't evaluate with that much of a bias. And yet, it needs to be understood that there will be different levels of spiritual evolution. And this is where I get very hung up when people, even spiritual teachers, sell this idea of enlightenment being an ending or a final step. And, you know, I've seen spiritual teachers say the no mind is enlightenment, or when you get into this state of being egoless. And I have to say, this to me is amateur bullshit. It's not reality. These are teachers that have they've achieved a certain level of enlightenment and then they get stuck there. And then they sell their courses and their packages, and it's very, very biased and it's very, very misleading. There are other spiritual stages which will be, for the masses, completely incomprehensible. There will be particular spiritual paths that are, I would say, in certain examples, more advanced and therefore more challenging to understand to the masses. And the popular New Age circles will see the more occult or hidden spiritual areas as being dark or scary or more complex or missing the mark or not doing what a good person is supposed to do. And this is a horrible, horrible bias. This is, in fact, no different than the day and age in which we're coming from, the medieval era in which the Spanish Inquisition was conquering the world because we know the truth, or when we were burning witches at the stake for working with darkness or the devil. This is amateur, immature souls who are brainwashed by the one-size-fits-all capitalist agenda. This was the church. It was the same as a capitalist agenda. We need everybody to believe a certain thing so that way the Pope and the priests can remain in power and the church can own all the land and have all the resources. So the New Age movement is just another church. It is not that different than what the church did historically. And where there is this type of convert and condemn into believing or acting the same thing, this is the same thing as a modern day witch hunt. And I can't tell you how many people I've met or come across in my life that claim to be witches, that dress a certain way, that have a certain act about them, who will absolutely condemn someone who's doing a different practice other than themselves the same way the good Christians of the old era were burning the witches at the stake. And by the way, the people burning and torturing witches, they were the ones that believed they were good. They were the ones that believed they were spreading love and light. And they were the ones that were burning the people that they believed were demonically possessed. And if we think that we're beyond that as a species right now, I got to tell you, it's not the case. It really disturbs me, some of what I see out there in the world, because the witch hunts have not ended. The prejudice against the divine feminine has not ended. And the New Age movement that parades itself as feminine revival is not a feminine revival in many, many cases. The New Age movement, as I'm going to share with you today, is largely hyper-masculine. And that's because what is hyper-masculine philosophy, teaching, and understanding is more easy to package and sell than the feminine perspective and the feminine reality that is a much more complex, and I'm going to add a much more mature, in this day and age, level of understanding. And so we don't get a whole lot of feminine teaching or understanding in the New Age movement in particular, not in the popular teachings, circles, cults. There is a gravity towards you should make it lighter. You should make it easier to package, easier to sell. This is criticism I've received constantly in my 10 years of doing astrology work, is you're too dark, you're too mean, you're too emotional, because everybody wants this hyper-masculine deception, which is that we're going to convert to the right belief system, or we're going to think the right thoughts, and then our life is going to become perfect and happy. And what that philosophy becomes is a means to bypass being a healthy human, which is driven by our feelings of empathy and compassion, which means that we are increasing our sensitivity to the world. And as we're increasing our sensitivity to the world, we feel the suffering and the darkness of the world more. And then we're driven by that compassion and that empathy to be of service and healing in the world. This whole idea that positive thoughts and positive emotions are higher vibration than negative thoughts and negative emotions is a way to put down our suffering brothers and sisters. It is a way to shit on the people who need healing and help the most. And we call that spirituality in today's day and age. And you know what? It's a Oprah book club that enables people into being dissociated assholes. That's not what a hyper-masculine spiritual path has to be either, but that's usually what I see these hyper-masculine spiritual paths enabling. So there's this gravity. If you are an astrologer, if you're a healer, if you're an energy worker, if you're involved in this whole universe of what's new, alternative, or simply ancient and forgotten, because the New Age is a weird conglomeration of all the above. I think the New Age movement, generality here, is mostly a bunch of pretty sounding ideas, and that's what I think, positive thought, and the positive thought movement is Scientology. It's just an idea to get people excited and to sell things at them. And you know what? I've had so many clients who've read The Secret Book, and they have suffered so much. It increases our guilt. It increases our spiritual-driven misogyny. I give the example of the Secret for Kids book that I read in a Whole Foods, and my jaw dropped, because in the Secret Book for Kids, little Johnny loses his dog and uses positive manifestation to bring his dog back home. And what that book teaches children is when something bad happens in your life, it's your fault, because you're not thinking the right way. Even Abraham Hicks has mentioned something about how African children manifest their own poverty. It's oppressive. It's evil. It's not defending or protecting the outspoken and the downtrodden. It's a way of ignoring them. It's a way of bypassing them, and that creates evil. So we need to be careful about these ideas that if we think or feel positively everything's going to happen wonderfully in our life, all that is a reflection of privilege. And a lot of my New Age brothers and sisters are very privileged to live a very luxurious life where they don't have to encounter so many of the real life challenges that exist in the real world outside of a first world country. And we believe that those people who are being bombed, who are being completely racist, prejudiced upon, or thrown in prisons, they're just thinking the right or wrong things. My friends who have these types of beliefs, I invite you to experience more of the world. I invite you to experience a greater diversity of souls. And a lot of these New Age charlatans, they don't encounter the people who are actually suffering. They're doing healing and teaching and crystal therapy for the rich. And there's none of this made available for people who are sick, who are suffering, and who are poor. Because if you brought those teachings to the sick, suffering, and poor, you would very quickly realize how ineffective those teachings and beliefs are. In fact, all they do is increase the amount of suffering for those who need help and assistance. One of my favorite quotations from a Hindu saint, Neem Karoli Baba, known as Maharaji. This was Ram Das's guru. People used to ask Maharaji all the time, hey, how do I get that quick fix? Hey, how do I get that lottery jackpot ascension or spiritual evolution? Which is basically what the New Age movement is constantly asking all the time. And what Maharaji said is, if you want to raise your kundalini, feed people. You want to raise your kundalini? Clothe people. You know, this Kundalini yoga is a very, very popular yoga branch in this day and age, Yogi Bhajan. It's a hyper-masculine yoga practice. And there's nothing wrong with a masculine practice. It's just about understanding that if we are using the body to force our way through a particular way of feeling, so that way we're always happy and we're always light and we're always full of energy, that's very useful. That could help us get through some really challenging things. In fact, I would say Kundalini Yoga is a wonderful spiritual practice when we're aware of its hyper-masculine propensity and when we keep it in balance with our feeling, with our emotions, and our compassion. Because there's nothing that drives me more nuts than when these hyper-masculine spiritual practices are self-proclaiming and self-identifying as feminine. It's bullshit and it's oppressive. It's keeping the feminine oppressed. It's saying the feminine is lesser than, and then we pat ourselves as the back as if we're bringing the divine feminine in when we're just being the next Spanish Inquisition. Now, it's not all bad. I get very passionate and very heated here because I've seen so many personal examples of this, which is why I don't feel a need to bite my tongue. I can be very direct, and you can take it or leave it. It may ruffle some people's feathers, and I would say that's healthy. It's good. It's not saying I'm 100% right. It's just an opportunity to think about these things. This is all I'm trying to get through to people. It's please think about things. Let's actually use our mind. Let's actually understand what is life, what is nature, what is humanity. Now, the good thing about the New Age movement and the Oprah Book Club and the Eckhart Tolle is that it makes an increased accessibility to the masses. It was only the church in Victorian era thinking that was available in our culture and society just several decades ago. So we can, as much as I am critical of the New Age movement, I am appreciative of the fact that this is making these ideas outside of our cultural framework more accessible. It is opening avenues for us to make contact with more Eastern thought, Eastern ideas, to spread awareness of spirituality that exists outside of just go to church every Sunday. So this is good. This is important. This is a sign that there is progress occurring in the world. At the same time, I get worried about cultural appropriation, where we say, hey, the new thought movement is Eastern thinking. No. Where we say, oh, we believe in reincarnation, and so we understand Hinduism and Buddhism. No. Or, we're breathing fire up and down our spine, and so, we're tantric practitioners. Well, maybe yes or no. This cultural appropriation is very, very common here in the West. And the spreading of culture, the diversification of culture, the fact that cultures are merging is wonderful. We want to have people born in the West that are coming into contact with Hinduism and practicing Hinduism, the same way I think we want people in the East to be coming in contact with Christianity and practicing Christianity. But hopefully this will be in a way of opening and expanding our understanding of the world, as opposed to condemnation of tradition or culture where we could potentially throw the baby out with the bathwater. The number one challenge, again, is that in this quick fix, win the lotto way of spiritual practicing, is that this is where people get deceived into this false reality, that we have this capability to just transform our reality in the snap of a finger. That's what keeps people buying the classes and buying the courses and buying the books in a way that can be deceptive. Now, again, I'm not also doubting that there can be extremely revolutionary perspectives, extremely revolutionary ways of thinking and behaving and dealing with energy that could transform our reality overnight. Is this what I see by and large being packaged and sold by the New Age movement? No, I have yet to see any of that being packaged, bought and sold by the New Age movement that has any validity in reality whatsoever. What I see is that all of that is largely deception because it looks good, it sounds good, and it gives us a way to bypass the harder, more complex regions of reality. Real spirituality actually veers into the complex, the darker, the harder to accept realities. That's real spirituality. Real spirituality is holistic, meaning the whole, meaning the all. Meaning nature is not just fun and good and everything's supposed to be paradise. When we go off into nature, is that what you see? When you see predator and prey, and you see praying mantis beheading other praying mantis? I don't think so. This is also the issue with oracle cards that only have positive oracle cards. That's not a real oracle. A real oracle reflects nature. It reflects duality. It reflects polarity. It reflects the whole full spectrum of possibility and experience. If an oracle reflects nature, then you can do an oracle reading. Then you can get a reading that might be useful and accurate because it's not just going to lead you away from reality. Okay? Now, what we want to be doing is seeing what works, seeing what's measurable, provable, effectively changing people's lives, effectively improving people's health in a way that's not demonizing science, but integrating science as a way of fact-checking, as a way of using the critical mind to be the friend of our spirituality, to be the friend of our intuition. Why do we say that the intuition is versus the mind? This is a horrible bias. This is the type of bias that, again, leads people into cults, leads people into deception, because we are putting down our capability to think as individuals. This is the same teaching the church has been spreading for centuries. Folks, we're not beyond the Christian era. The New Age movement is mostly a recycling of Christian belief and thought. If you believe the right thing, if you pray to the right God, you will be taken care of. And if you're not praying to the right God or believing the thing that's right, maybe you're being deceived by the devil and then your life's going to suck. Regardless, what happens is people suffer when they have an authentic full spectrum life and experience because we have these ideas that life should only be pretty if we have these right teachings or we joined the right 30-day class and now our life's going to be perfect because we're ascended. What I would say is that the truth, which we're all getting closer and closer to, but the truth is so complex, so inconceivable. We could say that God is so complex and so inconceivable. We're always moving closer to that, and that will always be deeper, more complex, require our evolution, require our humility, require our willingness to learn, to be open-minded. So the truth is a cult. The truth is not popular. The truth is not being packaged and talked about by the masses. The truth is being discovered constantly by a small group of people that are the courageous souls that are willing to go where others dare not go. Do we understand this? I'm going to repeat that. The truth is where those few are exploring the dark and daring to go where others dare not go. And I see the New Age movement condemning such souls. Oh, don't explore that. Oh, this isn't covered by the teaching. My teacher says that we don't believe in gurus. My teacher says that we don't need to read books anymore. In fact, we don't need to think anymore. In fact, we don't need to explore anymore. We just do this. Folks, don't just take my word for it. Put it to the test. When somebody says, hey, got this teaching, you just got to do this. Fucking test it out. Tell me how that works in a diversity of different circumstances, in a life where there's so much that is possible. This is where people just want to be deceived. See, the reason why these cults are going to grow and these books are going to sell is because people don't want the truth. The truth is going to require our work. It's going to require our adjustment. It's going to require a little bit of pain because we're going to wake up to where we were previously deceived. We're going to have spiritually dissolution. We're going to have this confusion that is a necessary part of learning and growth if we actually care to learn and grow. This is going to be too hard and too challenging for the majority of souls. So this is a controversial idea. Not everybody that's interested in spirituality is spiritual. Not everybody who's a part of the church is actually into the religion or the practice or the understanding. Not everybody is at the same level of spiritual evolution. I've heard amongst astrologers, I've heard these same just whitewash, turn everything into a blob so that way we don't have to critically think and we don't have to challenge ourselves. Some astrologers would say, well, if you're into astrology, well, then you're of a spiritual level of evolution. I mean, you're exploring nature, you're asking questions, and this may or may not be true. Just because someone's into astrology does not mean that they're actually spiritually evolving at all. There can be all sorts of different reasons why someone may be into astrology that are not an authentic digging into the dark or exploring themselves or wanting to evolve. It's only going to be a percentage of souls that actually want to evolve, and you can usually pick these souls out of a group of people. They look different, they smell different in an energetic way, they've got greater passion, they've got greater depth. Depth, a willingness to go where others dare not to go, which is a willingness to enter the full spectrum experience of life. Not just happy thoughts and emotions, but the full spectrum experience of life is where true healers and true teachers go, because that's where the people that are suffering are. They're in the darkness, they're in the pain. And if we have dissociative, hyper-masculine, always happy, always positive, that can become oppressive. And I also want to acknowledge that the masculine is beautiful, it's glorious. But let's know the difference between masculine and feminine, please. If we want to talk about these things, we need to know what we're talking about. So Mars and Saturn are the most masculine planets. Mars is, we can do it. We're courageous, we've got the willpower, we can stand up, we can fight, we can push through. Saturn is the strength. I can overcome obstacles. I can transform and construct a reality that honors the world I want to live in. This is very different than the Venus feminine, always mutable, always changing, always being sensitive, being receptive to what's around us, being receptive to the people, the place, the area. If we're changing depending on person, place, time, and what's around us, that's a feminine sensitivity. Now, if we've had this idea, these teachings and these conditionings that we shouldn't be changing, that we shouldn't have those full spectrums of emotions, that we should feel the same wherever we go, whoever we're around, this becomes oppressive. Don't hang around them. They're too dark. They're too lonely. They're suffering too much. Don't go to this place. It's too dark, aka there's too much suffering, aka there's too much oppression. We need those hyper-masculine souls that can keep themselves afloat in those places more than anyone else. And this is where the masculine, even what I'm terming hyper-masculine, can be wonderful, can be medicinal. For someone who can be a beam of light in the spiritual world, full of laughter and optimism, even while they encounter the suffering of others, the darkness of others, the darkness of the world, not in a mocking way, not in a put-down way, but in a way that understands I can go into these places or into these other people's fields. I can feel that. I can relate to them. I can meet them there. I'm not trying to get them to be me, love and light and Kundalini yoga all day, every day. I'm meeting them where they are. That person can change the world. They can impact other people's lives. But there's an understanding there. Even the story of Jesus Christ is, well, my mission is to get crucified for the good of all people, and I don't want to do that. That's painful, that's hard, but I understand this sacrifice is necessary, that it will bring a deeper understanding of unconditional love and wisdom and anchor that in the world. And so I'm willing to do that, and I will therefore, with that higher understanding, maintain a level of perspective that is holistic, that does have a level of positivity and seeing from the higher perspective. That would be a healthy understanding. That would be a healthy integration of what I'm terming masculine and feminine energy or wisdom. Okay? So we want to be measuring the effectiveness of a spiritual practice. You know what I would say that is? How well is a spiritual group, a spiritual teaching, religion, or cult effectively benefiting what is outside of it? What if we lived in a world where nations were evaluated by how well they took care of other nations? What would our world look like? How might that world be different than the world in which we live right now? Why is it any different for the cult or the religion? One of the saddest things I experienced in my past exploration of religion and tradition, of which I've done quite a bit, because I've been fascinated with traditions and why they work and what's beautiful that got lost and why it got lost, so we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, is it's like a lot of these religions are dedicating themselves to creating the world's greatest temple, for example, not to name any names or anything, building the world's greatest temple next to the world's most polluted river. And the energy and the resources is being built into creating a statue that is so many times larger. And what is this benefiting outside of the cult? What is this benefiting outside of the group? How much energy and resources is being devoted to charitable causes or, helping uplift the sick, needy, or the poor versus spreading our beliefs via, book distribution or something like this? Not that I have any experience with any such cults or religions. How disappointing. How much that is a failure to embody the essence of what that tradition or that religion may be. So, my friends, our spiritual path is measurable. Our spiritual progress is measurable. We should always be expanding and growing in our sensitivity, in our personal relationship to God, our intuition, our sense of understanding life and nature in a holistic way, so we can live in a better, healthy relationship to all people and all that is. This is all measurable. This requires no blind faith. So what happens is that in the New Age movement, where there's this cult orientation to what's popular and what sells, because the majority of people are actually more cowardly to explore where others dare not go, there can be a putting down of those who are pioneers, of those who are advancing the species. We'll say, oh, well, that's off limits, or I don't understand what that is. And this is, again, the continuation of the witch hunts in our current day and age. The witches were simply the wise and powerful souls that understood things and acted in ways that were not understandable by the masses, and so they were condemned. And if we think this is not the fashion trend in the New Age movement as a general mass of people, I think we need to look at things again. I think we want to be splitting the New Age movement, as I've been saying in my videos, to the horror of so many, because we're all supposed to be love and light all the time, right? No. That might be really oppressive. We need to be splitting the New Age movement into different groups so we can understand through identification. And it's not about better or worse, it's about understanding there are differences in these paths, and they have different results, and they have different measurable outcomes. A lot of the New Age movement is Ascension Club. It's not measurable ascension. It's, are you talking about ascension? Are you interested in ascension? There are many levels of enlightenment. The Magi, the sorcerer, the witch, the shaman, and the fakir have been the misunderstood, too dark, scary, complex to be understood by the majority of people in the past and still in our contemporary time. And people dress up like witches, they say they're doing witchcraft, and a lot of it is just a show. Witchcraft is still a cult. Shamanic practices is still a cult. These are very ancient, long forgotten, mostly feminine and matriarchal traditions that are trying to make their way back into human consciousness and awareness, but it's still mostly only the few and far between that are willing to explore and discover what is not being disseminated by the masses in the popular circles. The feminine is the left-hand path. We have to understand the left-hand path was across the board, across all religions and traditions, for the most part, demonized, turned into evil, dark, demon worship. And we would like to say that we're beyond that day and age, but we aren't even close. I see this type of condemnation and projection going on all the time. And it is the majority of people who are afraid to hold space for the truth that are able to be brainwashed the same way the Spanish Inquisition was brainwashed into believing they were spreading love and life while they converted, condemned, tortured, and killed cultures outside of their own simply because they did not understand what was outside of themselves. So let's just be aware, feminine wisdom, teaching, and spirituality embraces what is mutable. The moon is the most quickly moving, planetary force, and the moon is the most oppressed planet in our day and age. Has been for thousands of years, still is. We used to call them lunatics, those souls who are particularly connected to the moon. Why? Because their mood changes, and that's considered inferior. That's considered weakness. How are we going to fight our wars if we've got moods and we've got emotions? How are we going to do our assembly line factory work if we've got moods and emotions? The patriarchal oppression of feminine wisdom is reflected in New Age spiritual thought, where we say that high thoughts, high vibration moods and thoughts are good, and low vibration thoughts and emotions are bad. That is an oppression of feminine truth, which changes. And there are many feminine paths and many feminine religions that are not represented in the New Age movement. How much Sufism do you see talked about and spread in the New Age movement? Very feminine path. How much Bhakti Yoga do we see talked about and spread in the New Age movement? Not very much. By the way, Bhakti Yoga is not saying a mantra so you feel positive all the time. The Sahajiya path, the Tantra path, very feminine paths. Is this about overriding our emotions and our feelings so that way we're flatlining, we're all love, we're all light, and we're up here all the time? Let's just understand and be able to identify and distinguish masculine from feminine, because they are both essential. We need Mars and Saturn. Yoga is so essential. We need to be able to move through moods and feelings so we're not just stuck in them all the time and bitter and complaining all the time. Maybe I could use a little bit more masculine practice while I hold space for the rest. I mean, we need each other, yeah? This is a true wisdom. But let's be aware of where this can become damn oppressive. And I call out teachers. I call out teachers when they spread harm. Abraham Hicks, it's not okay to say that people in Africa are manifesting their own reality. What incredible ignorance. To say that a rapist to say that someone who suffered rape has attracted their rapist? Are you fucking kidding me? How do we allow these teachers to get away with this shit? I'll tell you how, because people want to be brainwashed. People want to be possessed by a cult. They want these scary, delusional realities to be true because it's harder to accept the complex world in which we're actually born. Nature is the yin-yang. Nature is light and dark. We consider light good and positive and dark, scary and bad, because we're so biased as a species. And think about the lingo we use in these new age groups and movement. It's all the same shit. Love and light, love and light, love and light. We might as well be saying white people, white people, white people. The idea that darkness needs to be conquered, the idea that we need to convert others to a love and light way of thinking, is the root of evil. Because it closes down our compassion and our sensitivity to feel into the reality of other people's experience, to actually meet people where they are. And it's easy to identify a true teacher and a true healer, because what a true teacher and a true healer wants to do is go down into hell and meet the souls that are suffering down there, not because it's bad, not because it's lesser than, not because those people deserve it and they use their mind to attract that, because that's where love wants to go. Love does not want to stay floating up here and talking about nice things and blah, 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 blah. It's horseshit. It's robots. It's lifelessness calling itself spirituality. That to me is deception. That's getting very close to evil. I mean, do we say that the Spanish Inquisition and the Nazis doing what they were capable of doing is not evil? It is, because of the ideas and the beliefs that misled them into performing such atrocious acts. We would love to believe we're so beyond this ourselves. We're not. If we can't identify these things in ourselves, we're fucked. We're possessed by the devil while we think we're an ambassador of the light. And I meet these people out here in Asheville, Love and Light, cult communities all the fucking time. I'm going to give some recommendations for some popular teachings and popular books that I think are just wonderful. Because I don't always want to be just angry and critical and just pointing out the negative, even though I'm very happy to carry out that role because of the lack of this being carried out by others. Sir, I'll do the dirty work. I'll do the dirty work and then get shit on by everybody who takes the easy path. That's a part of it. For those who are actually reviving the feminine, my friends and fam, you know exactly what I mean. I recommend Mother Night, Myths, Stories, and Teachings for Learning to See. Woman Who Runs with the Wolves, amazing author, amazing work. Going where others dare not go, exploring other cultures that are not understood or covered in our own, and bringing that lost, indigenous, matriarchal, feminine wisdom into the forefront, and acknowledging the souls that are doing this work, which will have the experience of being marginalized, being misunderstood, or isolated. That's what it's like. She does amazing healing work. I recommend the work of Toko Pa, who brings a light to Sufism. Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Kimmerer. You see, the actual earth-centric teachings, those who are working with plant spirits and plant medicines, the actual shamanic practices, these are not teachings that have the one-size-fits-all light beam type of perspective. This is an understanding of diversity, which means people have different ailments and different issues in different parts of the bodies. Therefore, we all need different yogic prescriptions. We need different plant and health remedies. We need different spiritual practices. And if we're oriented towards one thing, how can we embody that? My passion for astrology is that it is a tool and a gift to reaffirm the total uniqueness and individuality of a soul and acknowledge the diversity of these different teachings. People are asking me to spell these teachers. Toko Pa, Toko-Pa. Robin Kimmerer, Robinkimer. And then again, Mother Night, Myths, Stories, and Teachings for Learning to See in the Dark. Okay. Google is your friend. You'll be able to find all this stuff. Give it a 2-second Google search. This leads me into gene keys and human design. Okay. So everything that I've said is leading up to gene keys and human design, because you can probably already get a sense of how I will approach and see these things. First of all, I want to acknowledge what's wonderful about gene keys and human design. It's making the reality of astrology and the I Ching available to a greater diversity of souls. It's making the usefulness of astrology and I Ching approachable to a greater amount of souls. Because I meet so many people that are interested in astrology, the same way so many people in the New Age movement are interested in spirituality. And yet the amount of souls who went down the rabbit hole of astrology to gain the experience to do really deep, accurate astrology readings are almost nothing. And just not there in comparison to those who are interested in astrology and giving kind of surface level regurgitation of information or what I read in the book. And so this person says this about this aspect. I mean, that's not a real astrology reading. So to actually master astrology takes years of practice. Clarissa Estes, thank you so much. Mother of Night, thank you. It's going to be only the few and far between that are authentic astrologers. And I don't mean to say that to toot my own horn. This is just the reality of there being a diversity of different people, and authentic astrologers are few and far between. Paramahamsa Yogananda wrote this in his book. His guru Sri Yukteswar wrote this in The Holy Science, that there's only a few astrologers, authentic astrologers. Jeffrey Green, this is the first thing he writes in his Pluto book, because he knows the reality of the astrological community, that it's going to be a few people that actually go to the bottom of the barrel. Most people are interested until it gets a little too deep, a little too complex, a little too scary, and then they lose interest. And that's fine. We don't need everybody to be an astrologer. That's why gene keys and human design can be very, very useful. Frankly, it is incredibly easy to use gene keys and human design in comparison to learning evolutionary astrology as taught by Jeffrey Green, which is what I, put out there as being the deepest, realist astrology that there is. There's only several dozen evolutionary astrologers that are actually fully trained in Jeffrey Green's system on the planet. How many people have you heard talk about evolutionary astrology? I'm telling you, there's several dozen of us on the planet right now. So very few go all the way down. By the way, all of the evolutionary astrology curriculum, information, you can learn on your own for free. Simply go to schoolofevolutionaryastrology.com. You can go to the EA message board. I assure you, for those who actually have research skills, because you need some of those in the path I'm recommending here, you can learn everything about evolutionary astrology and get the most powerful capability to read a soul and the lifetime without having to spend a whole bunch of money. But I know very few people are going to go that route. Beware. So gene keys and human design, I find these things are very useful. I have gotten information from a human design reading where I've been amazed, like, wow, they've really found a formula and a system that is giving really in-depth, very individual and particular recommendations that I find are accurate and very useful to the masses. So you can bet I'm applauding these endeavors. I think it's wonderful. And at the same time, my friends, we cannot compare gene keys or human design to astrology as if they're the same. No. Astrology is the source code. Human design and gene keys is a man-made system where there's particular formulas that simply combine the I Ching and the tropical zodiac together. So let's be clear, gene keys and human design uses the tropical zodiac, and it simply divides that 360-degree wheel into 64 hexagrams and then explores those meanings when we combine 360 divided by 64. This is what astrology is. We discover, we do not invent, we discover the hidden patterns in nature. And that's what Gene Keys and Human Design is implementing to give these highly useful individual prescriptions to people. This is not a replacement for astrology. Astrology can do anything. Any person, place, or event in three-dimensional time can be reflected through the astrology to understand why that person, place, or thing exists, that event exists, what's going on in it, what are the pieces, what are the ingredients, how can we work with that. That's astrology. It's not a man-made system. It is the source code directly from God and nature to comprehend anything that exists in three-dimensional time. Phenomenon on this earth, I may add. Astrology, as we know it, is everything on this earth. So, in no way do my, human designers and my gene keys, they're not replacing the astrologers who will be much more few and far between if they're going all the way to accurately read a chart, which is going to provide an endless amount of information depending on how it's being implemented. At the same time, I am very excited by Gene Keys and Human Design because you don't have to go all the way down that rabbit hole to see how real, accurate, and effective astrology is. But I've been asked many times about Gene Keys and Human Design. For the longest time, I said, what's a Gene Key? And I think it's really cool. I think it's really awesome. I'm really glad people are exploring this. And my hope is that in no way, shape, or form are people going to be misled into believing that this is a replacement for astrology. We want to be having souls that continue to explore the source code of astrology so we can continue to pioneer and invent more man-made systems like Gene Keys and Human Design. Astrology is not a man-made system. Evolutionary astrology, as taught by Jeffrey Green, is not invented by Jeffrey Green. He discovered the patterns that reflect human nature that is absolutely mind-blowing, how we can understand with depth the lifetime of a soul, not just what someone experiences, but why, for the purpose of their own soul's evolution. I know nothing that replaces evolutionary astrology to the depth and the amount of awareness that that practice can bring. Okay, so that's my little reflection with Gene Keys, Human Design, and astrology, but this is a parallel to the New Age movement. This is a parallel to the practice of paganism and witchcraft. Did you know that all paganism and all witchcraft is a revival? For the most part. There may be some lost lineages of witches from other cultures or other places that remained hidden and behind the scenes, and wouldn't that be amazing to rediscover those lineages and to bring them back out into the light? For the most part, what we know as modern witchcraft is a contemporary revival of ancient practices that was rebirthed by particular individuals. The main one being Gerald Gardner, and the lesser known one being Robert Cochrane. And might it be useful for those of you who are practicing paganism or witchcraft to have an understanding of what your lineage is, where it comes from, why those lineages were birthed again, understanding that there are different lineages for witchcraft, so we're not all going back into this cult-like behavior of looking, acting, dressing, or sounding the same. I also want to mention that witchcraft is a feminine-oriented practice. It's oriented towards Venus, the earth. The pentagram is the symbol for Venus. Most of you know this, I assume. The symbol of the apple cut in half, where we see the five-pointed seed. This is a symbol for Venus, the earth. Most of you know that the snake in a tree is a symbol for the feminine, the kundalini. What was known as Lucifer, what was known as Satan, what was known as the devil, merged with the demonized feminine practices and traditions to the point where we don't know what's demonic and satanic versus what's feminine and lost in our current day and age. We need to sort through that to have an understanding of what is an actual feminine path or tradition. And I finally want to mention Bhakti Yoga as a very feminine practice and path that I do not see represented almost at all in popular circles or the New Age movement. I see people doing kirtan. We say mantras. Those mantras make us feel or behave a certain way. But this is not a deep dive into bhakti. There are very particular perspectives and philosophies around bhakti yoga. One of the main revivers of bhakti yoga, because bhakti yoga, just like most of these ancient traditions, were lost and then revived at a certain point. Most of this goes back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was a great saint in southern India. He is, at the root of many of our contemporary bhakti traditions. Well, Lord Chaitanya's mood is not what we see in Muji's teachings, in the secret teachings, in the Yogi Bhajan teachings. Lord Chaitanya's mood was very, very quickly changing. And Chaitanya would reverberate between intense feelings of closeness with God via the inner personal relationship to God. And for those of you who are into Sufism or Bhakti, it is a heart-centric practice where we are developing a personal relationship to the Supreme Soul or the Lord of the heart, who can be seen in different ways depending on personal mood. In Bhakti, we understand there is not one relationship to God. There are innumerable different relationships to God. Some people relate to God as a conjugal lover. For some people, it's mother-child. For some people, it's father God or mother God. And there is no right or wrong. It's about cultivating a personal, intimate, emotional relationship to God. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would reverberate between intense feelings and moods of separation from God that were so intensely painful and so intensely sad that he would go unconscious. And his devotees would have to retrieve him from the ocean, where he would just be out there. He'd go into ecstasy, and he'd just be floating out there in the ocean. They have to put out a net and bring him back. There's also a myth that he was in the Krishna temple and was so overcome with this painful separation from Krishna that he's rubbing his head into the ground, the stone floor, and he melts the floor out of the intense pain of separation between him and his beloved. And he would also have ecstatic moods and experiences that were just the opposite, where he would be singing and dancing and going unconscious because of the extreme bliss and happiness of the feeling of connection between him and the beloved. It is said that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was an incarnation of Srimati Radharani, the goddess. The goddess. And the goddess experiences the full spectrum, the divine dance of union and separation with her beloved. In the Rasa Leela dance, you may have heard this term somewhere. This divine dance is reflected through the union and the separation between lover and beloved. And you can bet that there is not just one happy emotion. And Sufi poets and Bhakti poets and Tantric poets are not writing from the one-size-fits-all, love and light, happy perspective. They write from extremely overwhelming, the beauty of my lover, the flowers and the beauty and the love, and it's filling me up. I'm so full of bliss, I can barely stay conscious. I'm being swept off my feet by how tasty and how enjoyable this love flowing through my body is, as well as the pain of being on this earth and feeling that separation, and my beloved is so far, and where did God go? And I have been abandoned, and I have been betrayed, and the pain is too much to bear, and one moment of separation from my beloved feels like 1,000,000 years because the pain is so intense. This is Bhakti Yoga. This is Sufism. This is the beauty that's not just our biased beauty, but beauty with a capital B that sees the beauty of the full spectrum of life, the beauty that we will become separate from all those that we love, our family, our beloveds. We all have a temporary stay in these bodies on this planet. And therefore, the pain of separation that we experience between ourselves and our beloved is a mark of our love. It's a symptom of our love. Lovers are not just feeling pleasure all the time. Does a good mother always feel pleasure in the relationship to their child? When their child is leaving their home, when their child is serving in the army, when their child has a painful experience? No. Why would we think that it's more spiritually evolved or ascended to have a higher emotional dimension? This is actually in the foreword of the Gene Keys book, that we want to maintain a positive emotion and a positive thinking. No, that's missing the mark. That's oppressing feminine practice and feminine path. It's wrong. It's not saying it's totally wrong. We want to be able to go through depression in a way that embraces depression. Depression is not the end of the world. Depression is beautiful. Depression is a creative incubation. When we're in the pain of separation, when we're feeling more distant from spirit, when we're feeling more distant from God, it's just as creatively inspiring. It's just as poetic as when we're feeling that connection. So we don't want to draw a satanic pyramid and say that positivity is at the top and negativity is at the bottom, because it is a prejudice. And again, it turns into the creation of evil because we actually avoid and bypass those who are suffering, and it's just the opposite of the feminine path, where the feminine path veers into the darkness and the suffering to bring light to those places. Not to the point of self-sacrifice, not to the point of losing our center. That's where we need a balance. Okay? So, this full spectrum emotional experience comes from living a natural life. This is why our emotions and the full spectrum emotion it's actually how to honor a truly loving way of being. We will experience the full spectrum, pain and pleasure, of union and separation. This is at the root of all life. What Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught is that our relationship to God is one of simultaneous, inconceivable union and separation. That's the ecstasy. That's what the mystics and the saints taste and experience in ever-increasing levels due to their own spiritual evolution and progression. It is this inconceivable simultaneous union and separation. We get to learn about that. We get to experience that in deeper and deeper, more meaningful and more profound ways, the more that we continue to live our life. So, I would say the radical feminine path and perspective is not for the faint of heart. And for the rest of us who are merely interested, you can check out the spiritual section of the New York Times bestsellers or featured on Oprah, and there's nothing wrong with that. But let's be clear, there's a lot of hidden truth and deeper reality that's not covered. And if you'd like to have more of that direct and experiential connection, you may need to dig a little deeper. You may need to explore a little bit outside of the group or color a little bit outside of the lines just to experiment and discover what is out there and what real life can be. You know, in these comments, I'm doing this live, someone brought up the menstruation cycle. What a beautiful example of femininity reflecting the moon, and how, again, the menstruation cycle is going to be a full spectrum experience. I certainly wouldn't be counseling women out there to be feeling all love and light while you're at the particular point of your painful menstruation cycle. That is a sacrifice on behalf of all of us to take on and absorb the emotions, the feeling of the world, and then bleed it out and sacrifice it back. This is the earth. Is this not the seasons and cycles of the earth? Is this not the reverberation between summer and winter time? Why would we sell this idea that it should be summer all the time, or that that's better? It's not nature. So femininity and even the woman body reflecting this mutable, ever-changing, like the weather, shifting and changing, that's a gift. That's a gift. You get to experience the building and shedding and the coming and the going, which is again at the root of all things. The divine dance of life is that of love. How could we know love if there was not separation between lover and beloved? How could we not know the other if there was no experience of separation? And does the painful and troubling experience of separation from the lover, is that a sign of our lack of love, or is that a sign that we truly love? We miss the lover when we're separate. The pain of separation is a symptom of our overall lovingness, but it's not a sign of failure. It is the divine dance which allows us to experience the reunion. And that next reunion is that much more tasty. And that next reunion is that much more awe-inspiring. See, our entire existence is built upon these cycles of union and separation. Humanity is cycling between gold and dark ages to forget what is our relationship to God, then remember our relationship to God. And we are, as a species, pulling ourselves out of a medieval era where we have forgotten and we need to remember, and we have to sort through all sorts of spiritual misconceptions on our spiritual journey. We will experience disillusionment. It's not a problem. It's not a failure. It's a part of this dance and this reunion. It's a part of this beauty with a capital B, and we learn to develop a taste for that. I don't agree with Muji that we get to this place where it's all, oh, we're above it all. No, we develop a taste for everything. The good, the bad, the ugly, the pain of the separation, the joy of the reunion, the bleeding heart poet, the true spiritual healer and charitable devotee of the world server, develops this higher taste. That the real and valid experience of hell on this planet awakens our heart to compassion. We are not trying to bypass that. We're not trying to skip over it. We get into it and we develop that deeper sense of taste. And then the next time we go through tragedy, the next time we go through pain, oh no, it is tragedy. Oh yeah, it is real pain. That is real suffering, but it is a part of the overall divine dance, and it leads us into a deeper depth, appreciation of beauty, intimacy, and love. My friends, I wish you all the best in honoring your own unique soul's journey. Wherever this journey leads you, may it lead you into this deeper recognition. May it lead you into the recognition that even that is worthwhile. It's all worth it.